Hi everyone, this is Kathie and welcome back to Hand Me Down Recipes. And today we have Julia with us and she is going to talk to us all about her mother-in-law's rolls, which I made and they're fabulous. So how are you today, Julia?
Good. How are you, Kathie?
I'm good. And
That's
tell
good.
us where you're calling from or in.
I'm from the Boise, Idaho area,
Oh,
but I'm
yeah.
more like an hour away out in the rural parts of West Idaho, Southwest
Okay.
Idaho.
So it is very early for you because I'm in Northwest Montana. So we are early together.
Yes.
I'm trying. I think
I think we're the same time zone.
right. As I say, Idaho has two different time zones, and so I can never quite remember which part is where. But
Yeah.
right, so very fun. I was in Boise. This is a total aside, everyone, but I was in Boise last June, and it was my first time ever, and it's a wonderful place. It's a
What month?
really. It was in
What month did
June.
you? June. Okay, yeah. It is a great place, but it does turn brown.
Oh yeah,
Probably
yeah,
July, August. It turns
yeah,
very
yeah.
brown.
I think that's the whole Mountain West, actually.
Yeah,
But
probably.
it's a beautiful, walkable city. I highly recommend it to anyone who's like thinking where you might want to go. Boise is wonderful. It was actually a really great city. It was. I don't know what I thought it would be. I guess I have more experience with Coeur d'Alene because I'm up this way. But
Yeah.
Boise is really. It's just really wonderful. Okay, an aside. So, Julia, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you're a blogger, but feel free to
Yeah.
tell everybody.
Well, I am a mother of six, so I had my first son when I was 20 and my last when I was 40. And so I've got a 20-year span of having kids. So I've been a stay-at-home mom and I have been a home cook for about 25 years now. And I have four grandbabies and yeah, life is great. And I do the blog at farmhouseharvest.net. So yeah, it's
So
fun.
wonderful. It is great. All right. And I had asked Julia to be here because we made her rolls at my house and they're wonderful. And you tell me that they are from your mother in law. So I have a question. Did you have to like be in the family for a while before you were allowed the recipe? Or were they
Uh,
like you were dating and she was like, these are my rolls, I love them kind of thing?
Actually, my mom did not teach me how to cook.
Right.
And so I got married and my husband's metabolism is very different than mine. Was a health nut. I was basically a vegetarian before I married my husband and worked at a health food store for several years. Then I married my husband who was from Idaho. I was from Southern California
Oh,
and he was used to eating meat and potatoes and bread all the time, and he had the metabolism for it. He needed it, or he was losing weight. I got married. Most people's husbands gain weight when they get married. My husband was losing weight,
oh wow. Okay.
which is really sad. So actually, he taught me to make rolls the first time,
Oh.
and then we went up to his mom's house, spent a little time with her. And no, she's a farmer's daughter. She's very down to earth and she's very giving. And so she just taught me that recipe and it was actually from her mother. So it had been passed down
Ah.
for generations. And yeah, it's just really simple, pretty easy to remember. And I don't even actually look at the recipe anymore when I make
Right.
it. I just throw it all together. But yeah, she's super sweet and she's taught me a lot of things.
That is really so wonderful. So one of the reasons I started Hand Me Down Recipes was because I love this idea that we learn food and recipes from a lot of people. Certainly we learn some from our family, but I've been kind of in the food space for a long time that I know not everyone does learn from their own family for whatever reasons. I'm not judging that. That's not right or wrong. You just don't. And then if you want to learn how to cook, you have to find someone who's going to teach you. And how wonderful. And I love that it's been passed down through multiple generations. It's
Yeah.
great. And it is, and I will tell everyone, we will link to the recipe in the show notes, but it is a pretty basic bread recipe. There's yeast, flour, butter, salt, milk. Is there milk? Yes. And so but it's really buttery and they're really light and fluffy and so rich. But it doesn't, I'm going to say they seem more butterier, is that a word, than the recipe actually calls. And it's probably because you brush it with a little bit of butter at the end. So it feels
Yeah.
really rich. But it's not like it has pounds of butter, but it feels like it does, which is really
Right.
quite great. And how does your family eat these rolls? Like, is it a special occasion rolls or do you eat them pretty often?
My family just feels loved whenever I make those,
Mm-hmm.
and they are the perfect side dish to any dinner, really.
Yeah.
Any meat, any soup, and sometimes we'll just have that and a salad, you know. I usually do cook a meat just because we are in Idaho and it's cold and
Yeah.
I don't know why it makes you hungrier. So
Yeah,
we
no, it does.
we eat a lot of meat and maybe, to stay warm, I don't know, but yeah, so my family has always we eat that whole pan like that.
Oh, yeah, but
so
there's a
fast.
lot of you.
Well, there was.
Oh, yeah.
Now most of my adult children have moved
Oh,
out, but
sure.
yeah, when all my kids were home, I could stretch that recipe into 15 rolls instead of 12. And yeah, they're all gone as soon as dinner starts. Those are all taken. So,
That's really great.
yeah.
And so you do. I mean, that's a really lovely way to say it. It's just that your family feels loved when you make them. I know there's like some I don't know about controversy, but some people don't like this idea that food is love, right? Because maybe
Right.
it could potentially have some disordered kind of thinking
Oh,
about it. But
100%.
I'm gonna say that just because it very much is how my family shows love and care is that we feed you. And so, yeah, I think food is love. I think we can still say that and have healthy relationship with food. I'm not a nutritionist, but I think that that's possible.
Yeah, and as a wife or a mother or even a grandma or an aunt, we're caring for people. So cooking is a service that
Right.
we're doing for them. We don't have to do that. We could buy something that's from the store and just throw it in the microwave or in the oven. So it really is a service. It really is, I feel like it really is an act of love. But for me, I have teenage boys, or I've always had teenage
Yeah.
boys for several years in my home, and their metabolisms are
Oh.
raging and they're hungry and they
Mm-hmm.
have all these muscles that they have to feed. And literally, they will express so much more love to me if I'm cooking them food, and they tell me like, I love you, mom, when I make them stuff. So for
Right.
me, it's rewarding in more than one way.
That's really great. And I will tell you, I had a teenage boy staying with us a few summers ago. He was kind of looking at colleges in our area and he stayed with us. And I was not used to having teenage boys around. And I had a sister, so like I just was never really around teenage boys other than like at school, but certainly not feeding them. Anyway, I could not believe the amount of food that he ate.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he was a tall, skinny kid. And one time, like, I was just making regular meals, and then he was like, "Can I have something to eat?" And I was like, "You have to tell me if you're hungry, because I'm not going to know, and I will certainly make you food." But like, I was really amazed at how fast teenage boys go through food.
Yeah, and they're skinny and you're like, where
Yeah,
does all this
brat,
go?
you little brat.
You got an empty leg.
That's really great. And it is just I love that you said it's a service. And it is. And I know that we could look at that as a sort of a drudgery, of course, because, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, it can get old fast. And I don't want to pretend that sometimes I just simply don't feel like cooking, because I do. We all do. But
Hmm.
we can choose to look at it as kind of a loving service,
Hmm.
but it doesn't always have to be super fancy. And it doesn't always
No.
have to be homemade rolls. I mean, it can honestly just
Right.
be whatever, right? So
Oh, for
whatever
sure.
your family likes. That's really such
But this
wonderful.
recipe, it's like once you get it down,
Yeah.
it is really simple. And
Yeah.
the one thing I like about it is, maybe I'm blessed to usually have butter in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
I think we all are, especially in this country, we're
Yeah.
blessed to usually have butter in the
Right,
refrigerator.
right, right.
I actually grew up with margarine. So for me, butter
Oh,
is like, it took me like a year into marriage before I actually slathered a piece of bread with butter and took a bite.
yeah.
But for me, it's something that's like a pantry staple.
Mm-hmm.
So I always have it on hand. And so for me, and once you've made this recipe like 3 times, you just kind of memorize it and you get the feel of the dough, and it becomes one of the simple recipes for you to make, and it does become an easy thing,
Right.
you know.
And I think with bread, and I say this to people who are maybe new to baking bread. So your recipe, if you have experience with baking bread, you'll have no problem making this recipe if you have any experience at all. But if you're very new to making bread, it might feel a little intimidating at first, but honestly, the thing about bread is the more you do it, the better it becomes. The first loaves might turn out maybe not great, the first rolls. But if you do it again and you do it again, each time it'll get better. You'll get a feel for how dough should feel, right? Like, because
Right.
you said that, like, you get it as you're kneading bread, you get a feel for how it should go. And I won't pretend, I have a KitchenAid stand mixer. I've had, probably almost 30 years now. I definitely use the dough hook to get it started. Like,
Oh yeah.
use
Yeah.
technology when you have it.
Oh, for sure. I grew, well, I didn't grow up doing it, but I was gifted a KitchenAid mixer
Me too.
when I got married. And so, yeah, most of the time that I've made these rolls, it's been in the KitchenAid. the last few years, I've just enjoyed the kind of therapy of
Yeah,
it. You know, it's relaxing to
it
knead the
is.
dough and play with the dough, maybe like a kid playing with Play-Doh a
I
little
know.
bit. And so I've just enjoyed it a little bit more. But, you know, my life stage has changed. I only have two kids that are actually living at home at the moment. And so I have the time to do that.
And I think I often start them in the mixer, but I always finish it by hand just because I like to. I like to feel the dough and make sure it's
Hmm.
getting to where I need. So good for you. And so, and the other thing about baking bread for everybody is like when it's baking, right? Like the smell of it. The whole family smells it. They all know what's coming. They're all very excited, right? I'm sure.
Yeah. And it warms up the house. If it's the
Right.
winter time, I
Mhm.
just love having my stove on.
Me too. And I will say, I do not bake a lot of bread once the weather turns hot. I don't want the oven
Yeah.
on. I don't have air conditioning where I live. I mean, and granted, where
Oh.
I live, we don't get, because I was in Boise in June and it was like 85 degrees where it was like 30 here. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, we had like a big, it was unusually cool, but still it was cool. And so we only have 1 or 2 weeks where it gets to be like 90 degrees in the summer, but I am not baking bread when it gets like
Yeah, I think we get up to like 106
yeah, yeah.
sometimes.
No, thank you. And you don't want the oven on. Even if you have air conditioning, you don't want the oven on. It's just going to make everything miserable and no one's happy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Right. And you had mentioned about in the winter eating meat and whatever. And I actually, again, not a nutritionist or food scientist, but I do think that's really how our ancestors ate, right? Because we needed fat and food to keep us warm in the cold weather. And so it's very much kind of ingrained in us, I think, in our bodies.
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of
yeah.
like, yeah, carnal nature there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was a vegetarian for a long time too. So I get it. It was hard when I first started eating meat, but I actually felt
Oh,
better. I
I
know.
do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I struggle with anemia.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Red meat is definitely welcome around here
Yeah.
and I really enjoy it, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Right, right. And I'm not judging anybody for,
No.
everybody can do what they want, but I will say that I personally felt better once I started eating meat again.
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised on meat, stopped for a while. Yeah, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, that was my story too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So very funny. All right, and then and you said you guys kind of make this all the time, but I'm imagining during holidays and special occasions they're definitely kind of
Always.
present. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I like to get the cookie sheet out and then double or triple the batch and then just do it on a cookie sheet, you know.
Right.
Boy, you can get a lot of rolls that way.
Right. And one of the things, and you mentioned this too, is that you can stretch. And one of the things I definitely do if I'm feeding a crowd, and there's also like a really big meal, you don't necessarily need large rolls. So I actually weigh dough so that each roll is like the same size, right? So you can make a roll that's 4 ounces, but you can also make a roll that's 2 ounces of dough and then stretch it out, right? So is that kind of what you do? Do you do it by sight or you by weight?
Yeah, I just do it by hand.
Yeah.
My grandma my dad's mom, so on the other side of the family,
Mhm.
she taught me how to push the dough through your fingers right
Oh,
here
yeah.
and then pinch it off, and it kind of makes them really close to the same size.
Yeah.
So that's usually what I
That's
do.
great.
And that dough is so fluffy and the butter
Mhm.
helps it not stick to your hands so
Right.
much that it can just slip through and you can pinch it off and you don't have messy fingers, like you would with a
Yeah.
lot of other recipes. So yeah, that's usually what I do. But when I know, like if we're having people over for dinner and I know I have a lot of people to serve and want to have like 30, a certain number of rolls, then I will use my dough or bench scraper
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
to cut them all. And I just visually do it so that they're all about the same size and then shape them individually in my hands that way. So I've never actually measured them with a kitchen scale. I am a pretty informal
Yeah.
cook. So I do use the kitchen scale with some like sourdough recipes
Sure.
when I'm using like fresh ground flour because it's a lot lighter and fluffier. So the measurements just don't work with cups.
Right, right.
But that's about the only time that I use a kitchen scale. I probably should use it a lot more.
I think when you get experience, right, you don't need much. But I don't have the very good visual eye for whatever reason to make them the same size. And so what ends up happening, right, is you get one that's really big and maybe not quick so cooked, and then one that's
Right.
overcooked. So for me, when I do just measure it out. But I will say, I very rarely actually when I'm making bread, like I don't really measure. Like I don't pre-measure. I just dump flour until it seems right.
Yeah, especially recipes that you're so familiar with, right?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just don't. And I think that's like a really good thing. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I could never do that. It just depends on how you feel. And I grew up cooking, and so like for me,
Mm.
most of the time, I'm like, yeah, I'll just wing it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
When
Because
you're
you've been doing it for so long, right?
right, you just
Just
get used to
becomes
it.
second nature, right?
Right. And so, yeah, I'm glad. And I forgot about the tip about usually, right, squeezing it through your hand and pushing it up. And I do know people who do that. But again, I am not good at that and making them even size. So, for everybody who's listening, you can choose to do whatever works best for you.
Oh, yeah.
The kitchen scale works great. And I use the bench scraper too to like cut it and then put it on. But honestly, this is why I use the scale. Sometimes I will cut them and I swear to heaven, they are the same size. I put them on the scale and they're so far off. It's unbelievable. So it's just, and
Yeah.
it just depends on your eye and what you're good at. And we all know we have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. So
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I've definitely had some of them be much bigger and not as cooked as others.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny when you have a big family because some people like them a little doughier and some people like them a little drier.
Right.
And so everyone just kind of takes what they like.
Right. And I will use them differently too, right? Like, because sometimes bread might, although if you've got a big family, it might not last very long. But I will certainly freeze them and freeze extras because we are a household of two. A dozen rolls just isn't going to stay fresh very long on the counter, so we freeze them. And I did freeze your rolls, and they froze delightfully. And my husband would pull them out in the morning and thaw them out and have them with his lunch often. So
that's nice. Yeah, that is very nice, convenient.
Yeah. So that's a tip for everybody too. You don't have to like freeze the whole pan of dough. You can actually just put a couple like in a quart-sized bag and put them in the freezer and then just pull them out as you need them. Which is
that's so smart. Very good idea.
Especially when you don't have a large family. If you don't, if you've got a whole bunch of people that you're feeding, then certainly put a whole dozen in a bag, right? But
yeah. I think on the counter, if you didn't freeze them and you just put them in a Ziploc bag, they last like around 4 days.
Yeah.
And probably after 3 days, they're a little bit dry, starting to dry out a little bit, even if they're covered with plastic or something. So yeah, definitely want to freeze them at that point.
Yeah.
But the flavor stays the same.
Right.
They just get a little dried out. So
and sometimes that little dry out, you can absolutely warm them back up in the oven, whatever, and
slather more butter on top.
That's right. Absolutely. Or I was telling Julia before we hit record that my grandma used to make rolls in a round cake pan, and on her blog post she has them in a round pan, and it was very nostalgic for me. But my grandma, as soon as they would come out of the oven, right, like everybody wanted them, and we wanted them slathered with peanut butter. Right?
Ooh,
I love peanut butter.
I know.
So, yeah.
Me too. Yeah, a little too much.
Right? Yeah. And so if they get a little dry, you slather them in some peanut butter and jelly, and you've got a great sandwich for your lunch. And that's
Yep.
And do you have any other tips for people who might be making them for, say, the first time?
For the first time, I would say, I think that, a lot of times people get a little technical with, let's put all the dry ingredients in, and then let's get the wet ingredients in a different bowl, and then let's mix them together. Honestly, this recipe is just so simple. You really only need one bowl. You get your flour in there, make a little well in the middle to add your other ingredients to, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Making bread is so fun, and it's therapeutic. So I say just, get your hands dirty and enjoy the creativity of it. Really, you're really creating, so it's fun.
It is fun. So someone who might be more experienced, do you ever shape them, like tie them into little knots, or do you always keep it pretty roll shape?
I have always kept them super simple. You could definitely do the knots in a muffin tin or something like that. Honestly, I do use this exact same recipe for cinnamon rolls all the time.
Yum.
Yeah, because there's butter in them. I mean, it's not a ton of butter. It's like 1/4 cup of butter in the dough, but they roll out really well.
Right.
So you let them rise for the first rise and then roll them out on your counter. And then I just do dry cinnamon sugar in the middle of them, roll them up, cut them up. And then the recipe's the same after that. You let them rise for maybe 30 more minutes and then bake them. They make really good cinnamon rolls, even if you don't add any more sugar to the dough.
Right. I bet that's true because they're nice and rich. And then the cinnamon sugar on the inside is going to be plenty of sweet.
Yeah, you can make a glaze or something to go on top if you want, but yeah. So this recipe is actually really versatile that way. You could add anything to them. Like if you wanted to do orange cranberry rolls, add some orange zest and some dried cranberries or something in them. Yeah, it's kind of a really basic recipe that you could use to really be really creative and make whatever you want.
Right. You could add
breadsticks. Yeah.
You could add cheese, which I didn't do, but when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, you could add cheese to them, or
I have done jalapeno cheese.
Very
of
nice.
these.
See,
Yeah.
very good. And that is so good in the winter with a little soup, nice and warm,
Yeah.
and feels
Yep.
really good and comforting.
Yeah.
That is such a good idea. Well, great. I think I don't really have any more questions for you. Do you have anything else that you want to say about the recipe before we tell people where they can find you? Please.
I just, if you're looking for something that's super simple and pantry staples and something that you can really get used to making and incorporate in your regular routine, then this is a really flavorful, good recipe that everyone enjoys, and you can mix it up. There's a lot of different things you can do with it.
Right. And when you said pantry staples, it really truly is like it's everything you already have in your house, most likely. Now, if somebody is a vegan or can't do dairy for some reason, margarine and like a plant milk would work just as fine, yes?
Or oil, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, any plant-based or, butter alternative would work. Or oil. I have made them with oil. They just don't have the buttery flavor.
Right. Yeah, the
Yeah.
flavor will be different, but it will still, the breast recipe will turn out. And
Mhm.
and I do, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, it's fine to like sometimes make a fancy recipe where you have to buy special ingredients, but this you won't need any because like you, I always have butter in the freezer. So
Yeah.
right, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. That just so everybody knows, it really is something that you likely already have. And if you don't make a lot of bread, the only thing you might not have is yeast, but you can easily get that and keep it. And you should just have yeast in your house, I think.
Yeah, I like to buy the big brick.
Yeah, I do too. Like the 5 pounds or whatever.
Yeah, and keep it in the freezer. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I do that too. Yeah. And I just so everybody, I buy different kinds of yeast. I buy like the dry active yeast, which probably everybody is familiar with, and the instant yeast. I use them both, they both work.
Interchangeably, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little different, but how you use them, but it's fine for everybody who's wondering.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, Julia, tell everybody where they can find you online so they can come find you. We will add the links to the show notes, but please tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, I am on the blog at farmhouseharvest.net, and I am on there daily working on that. And then I am on YouTube at Farmhouse Harvest and Instagram at Farmhouse Harvest. All of them Farmhouse Harvest. Yeah.
There you go.
I do have a Facebook, but I'm not usually on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm on Facebook, but it's hard. Facebook is hard. You just never quite know. Well, you never quite know with any algorithm. You just got to be there and hope for the best, I guess.
Yeah. And I do Pinterest too. I really love Pinterest.
All right.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's a great place to find good recipes. I think Pinterest is a great, because it's so visual, of course, so you can really help. But I mean, we don't all have to have Instagram or Pinterest worthy photos of our food. It helps to kind of see what something is supposed to look like.
Right. Yeah. Usually I'm just using my phone to take a picture.
Right. Which is fine. Perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Kathie. It was fun.
Thanks.